безотговорно, но всъщност не е. Или поне в това иска да ни убеди Елена Панарити, гръцки икономист с голям опит в Световната банка и преподавател в университета Джон Хопкинс и в Уортън Скул към университета в Пенсилвания. Prosperity Unbound, how could we secure it?
By being honest and look long term and not short term and pretend that we look at the long term. Politicians are very short-sighted. Short-sighting is not taking you to unbound prosperity. Long-sightedness and the building of trust is the pentacle of getting to prosperity. And I'll explain to you why. In economics and mathematics, we have something called game theory. And in game theory, we have different sets of games. What that means is that we basically have agreements between individuals. And there is one type of a game, one type of an agreement between two players. And the agreement goes like this. I'm never going to see you ever again. I'm one player, you're the other player. I'm never going to see you ever again, but just right now. So I'm going to take the opportunity to grab and rip every single rent I can. Because I'm never going to see you ever again anyway, so my reputation is not destroyed. You don't care, so I'm going to just grab everything I can, and I'm going to run. So it's a fight of who's going to get more. And that's very short term. That's very, very short term. But then we want to move to something, I would think, we want to move to something which is a little less tribal, a little more evolved, right? Which is continuous games. I am going to see you tomorrow. I would like to keep a good relationship. So I would like to get into an agreement that will allow us to both of us have benefit. Because if you have a benefit, then I have a benefit. And if I have a benefit, then you have a benefit. And that means if we continue working in those set of agreements, we end up having a better community and a better life. That's the difference between northern countries, if you wish, or developed democracies or developed markets with less developed democracies and less developed markets. That's the difference between politicians with vision and politicians that are grabbers. They're very, very short-sighted. So that's how we get to prosperity. You need to start building those concepts of trust that you will be engaging with these people again and again and again.
Поводът да разговаряме с Елена Панарити е новата й книга «Благоденствие без край», в която на основата на дългогодишния си опит в Световната банка тя стига до заключението, че в развитите проспериращи страни неформалната икономика е сведена до минимум. И обратно, в бедните страни неформалността в икономиката значително преобладава над официалната. Книгата е издадена в Съединените щати и в Гърция.
Informality emerges out of the willingness of individuals to trade, to engage in a market, to buy, to sell, to inherit people's properties, to sell somebody's property, to rent a piece of property. When the formal structure that regulates a market, when the formal structure that regulates an economy is very complicated, it becomes every year even more complicated. And it's because either it gets over-regulated or it gets regulated on top of old regulations. In other words, an individual who wishes to do, let us assume an example, a transfer of his or her home, it takes more time to do the transfer in the formal sector than in the informal sector. And informality becomes even more a problem when the formal structure, in a way, becomes obsolete. Individuals who are logical and rational decide that they're not going to get engaged into such a energy draining, costly, and unpredictable exercise. Instead, they will limit themselves into a knowingly insecure, but less expensive and quicker transaction. So that's the informal market. And the informal market, it assumes it's not black and white. You can have about 70% of the world's population, about more than 4 billion people in the world, live and work in the informal market. And informality means that you may not have full security of your home or of your apartment. And you can identify that when it is not possible for you, for example, to sell it very quickly, to rent it.
Елена Панарити обаче припомня, че неформалната икономика е различна от сивата икономика.
The black market, on the other hand, is something rather different. The black market is a willingness to engage in black corrupted activity so that you can extract rent, you can extract higher profits. It is done with a purpose from the very beginning of the behavior, from the very beginning of the agreement. Both parties are knowledgeable of the fact that they're engaging in a black activity. An example of that activity is that I will be knowingly building a house in a place where I know it does not belong to me. I will knowingly trespass and take the land of another person. I will actually then go and do contracts and hire a notary public or a lawyer, will pay money, and then everybody is engaged in this black activity. Another black activity is when people get paid under the table extra money for specific non-eligible jobs or transactions. These are very close to, black activity is very close to corruption. Another black activity is when people choose not to pay taxes. It is exactly that informality that allows people to survive, it's basically survival, that keeps them in survival and never allows the markets to grow and become robust and develop and become competitive internationally.
В гръцката икономика съществуват и други форми на неофициалност.
Our country is full of bureaucratic issues. It's full of overlapping processes. It's full of rules that it's a typical example of a country that the reasons why you have informality in a country. So rules are conflicting with each other, they're overlapping with each other. It's rather hard to do enforcement of law or of rules. There are always new ways to come up with a new rule or a new regulation. Bottom line, people are confused. People don't really know exactly which way they should go about. So in Greece, we do have informality. It comes from the fact that in the 1800s, we adopted legal structures that did not come from us, although they originated from the ancient Greeks. So in the 1830s, we received the civil code of the German tradition and the commercial code of the French tradition, which were developed for different societies. Similarly, the same thing occurred in other Eastern European countries. And then there was a clash between the actual rules, and I'm explaining that in my book at, I believe, chapter 3. There is a clash of distinct rules that do not meet the needs of the people.
България с какво привлече вниманието ви и какъв вид неформална икономика установихте в Дупница?
We chose to start with Bulgaria because it had all three aspects. It has, of course, informality, but it's a new country. It's a new country where after transformation, after the resolution, if you wish, of the Communist Party, there was this transitional structure, brought the country into a market economy rather later. So that was a benefit and an advantage, because that meant that the level of difficulty of handling problems in Bulgaria is not going to be as high as handling problems, let's say, in Lebanon, all right, or in Egypt. because these other two countries have been working in the market economy for far, far more time. So to unlock and distract these problems would take longer time. So the second element was that there was a very serious commitment from the government to do the reforms. It's not necessarily the specific government I'm talking about, as much as the civil servants, the consistency of the governance. So it's a serious country, and it seems that they are very eager. They have the appetite of wanting to become better, stronger, robust, serious players. So we decided to work with Dupnica, because to me, after my experience and after having worked in 30 countries, the commitment of the people was tremendous. They work faster than we do. They run faster than we do. And there is nothing more beautiful than to work in an environment where your partner is far more engaged than you would have ever thought. And I know there are controversies about the city. It doesn't bother me to the least, because I've always learned, myself and my team, we've always learned that who we always serve are the people of whatever municipality or country we work for.
Елена Панарити е изработила свой инструмент за изучаване на неофициалната икономика, който се нарича Reality Check Analysis. Ето какво показва той за България.
Bulgaria is a country that really initiated its modern democracy a little later than Greece. In the southeastern Mediterranean, but it also imported a king, like the Greeks did. It imported, together with the king, it imported, legal tradition from the German Republic. But it has minorities, and before that it was the Ottoman Empire, before that there were influences from the Byzantine Empire, before that there were the Slavs and the Tatars. So you see, the reality check analysis has to go all the way back to the beginning and see what happened to that population, and it decided to go this way versus continue to develop with the formal structure. And we found out that it's an extremely interesting case where, because it had these legal traditions, it became rather rigid in terms of, and a little bureaucratic in terms of transferring property, but not as bureaucratic as other countries. So it's easier to resolve, if you wish. Why not as bureaucratic? In a way, I will tell you that the communist period was actually not a very negative period in that regard. And what do I mean by that? There were not very many transactions for 70 years. So right now it's easier to clean this. The problem starts from the day of restitutions. So the day we started having restitutions, that's when you start having black markets operating, people not really, because of the informality, people designing the properties in whichever way and forms they thought it's easier for them. And we are basically working with the framework of the reforms that have already been established since '94 and later on ratified in 2003, I believe, or 2004. And we just basically apply those by putting them down to the people. But the way we do it is we start from the people and try to get the people's involvement. There is no other way to get that, because it's super important to have confidence. And the database that we will build and the registry we are building, the database, it's a database of the municipality, it's a public database. It belongs to them. They will take care of it. They are already taking care of it.
А на своите бъдещи български читатели Елена Панарити написа: на българите с пожелания за силен и дълъг път към успеха и продължителното благоденствие.